Welcome into another edition of the Cubs Now podcast. Lance Brazdowski alongside Alex Cohen, who is on the road in Kansas City as we record this on Sunday. We're here to recap a bunch of Cubs happenings over the last week or so, the debuts of Kevin Gausman and Clay Holmes, Ryan Zeferjahn as well. And the big topic for the first block of our show here is going to be digging into the Pete Crow Armstrong versus Shohei Ohtani MVP debate, which is taking over the national baseball media scene. It'll be a fun conversation. First, Alex, I always love asking you, when you're on the road, how's the city you're in? So tell me about Kansas City.
Kansas City's great. Obviously, the first game was a lot better than the second game for Cubs fans, but you get to come here to an AL city. You do it every 2 years or every other year, and it's just a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun seeing Kauffman Stadium. Kind of feels to me like a minor league stadium on steroids, and I mean that as a compliment. It's just very intimate. Fans are really into it. There's really good promotions as well. And just all the blue in the stadium. I mean, you look down, there's royal blue and there's Cubby blue, and there's a very subtle difference. But seeing all the Cubs fans and, the Bobby Wood Jr. jerseys, and it's a really fun series. Really like Kansas City, really like their barbecue. I'm a real athlete. And I did 2-a-days just with barbecue and not football. I did Jack's Barbecue on Saturday afternoon with the broadcaster for the Royals, Jake Eisenberg. Also saw our own Elise Medeker there for the afternoon. And then in the evening, myself and Marquee Sports Network's best, Scotty Shacks, did a late-night dinner at Q39. And, you have 2-a-days of barbecue really impacts you like a 2-a-days of football. I'm tired right now.
Combo that with sweltering humidity and heat, and you got a day, man. That is an activity.
Yeah, quite the combo.
I love it. All right, let's dig into this Pete Crow Armstrong Ohtani MVP debate. I'm curious your thoughts here. I think we've conversed on this a couple times in various ways. I think leading up to some kind of podcast, eventually we knew we were going to discuss this. It's going to be a topic for the next 2 months because I do think it's going to be kind of an interesting race. Let's start with just the basics, like wins above replacement, WARs, kind of the primary model we have to value everything a hitter does or a pitcher does. If you look at it from that perspective, Pete is ahead right now, and it does seem to me like Ohtani's going to have some trouble closing the gap. So let's start here. Pete Crow Armstrong is about 8 F4 entering Sunday's action. He's about 7.3 on Baseball Reference. The difference between the WAR models for position players is primarily because they use a different defensive value system. OAA is what drives a lot, I believe, of fielding run value, which is fed into Fangraphs. And then Baseball Reference uses defensive run saves. So slightly different models that value Pete's WAR, subtly different. 0.7 WAR is not a ton. Ohtani has 3.7 WAR from the hitting side on Fangraphs and 3 from the pitching side. And again, similar 3.5 and 2.8. So Pete has about like a 1.3-ish WAR gap over Ohtani. And I think that is the main story. It's funny to me that even a couple weeks ago, Pete was ahead, and yet a lot of the markets had Ohtani ahead. And I think that was under the assumption that Ohtani would come back and pitch for some chunk of the season and maybe get to 120 innings, which would make this a much more interesting conversation. But I've always thought the Dodgers are just only concerned about the playoffs, such that they're not going to compromise Ohtani by bringing him back and being like, hey, we need you to throw 7 or 8 innings in the middle of September when we're, maybe we're still hunting for the bye, but we're in the playoffs regardless. So the market's kind of corrected since, and Pete Crow Armstrong is a subtle favorite depending on where you're looking. But just from the numbers standpoint, Alex, do you think Ohtani has a case purely from just looking at the numbers without maybe considering the context of what he does being unique?
I think if Shohei Ohtani does not pitch another inning and Pete Crow Armstrong continues this level of play or a all-star level of play, Pete Crow Armstrong's the MVP. Like, I think if the season ended right now, Pete's the MVP. But there's 45-plus games left. There's 25% of the season. And you brought up a really good point. Dodgers, as it stands right now, aren't getting a bye in the wild card. Or aren't getting by for the wild card. They'd be playing in the 3-6 matchup in the wild card. And I think for an older team and one that has played long postseasons, obviously, the last 2 years, with this core, especially of position players, I think if they have any question if they're going to get the bye, if they're worried about that, and Shohei's healthy, I think he pitches. And I think that will change the calculation of this conversation. So I think my ultimate take is if the season ended right now, Pete's the MVP. but the season's not ending right now. And the Dodgers, with the precarious positions that they're in, if they still remain in this position and it is September and they're struggling, I think they pitch Shohei. And I think that really changes things.
Yeah, the question for me then becomes, and you don't have to give me a specific number, but maybe we could kind of come up with a rough number on how many innings is he going to have to throw under the assumption those innings are fantastic for him to close the gap. Because I think the thing that is maybe missed sometimes with WAR is that it is a counting stat. Like, you are accumulating it in the more games you play. So you're going to have a strong correlation between the number of games you play and how high your WAR is. And if Pete just simply stays healthy through the end of the year, he's just going to continue to accumulate the defensive value that'll push him up to probably the 9 to 10 WAR window. He might even get over 10 WAR, which we've seen Judge do, I believe, 3 times in the last 4 years. The pitching side, to me, is difficult to reconcile alongside the defense. And I think I saw this good tweet that I want to bring up. I think it's from Nate Roper, who I've seen do some pretty good work. So shout out to him for grinding the Twitter sphere and such. He talked about the debate to me that I've seen most frequently is people try to simplify this conversation by going, is Pete's defense as valuable as Ohtani's pitching specifically? And he kind of breaks it down here, but he basically saying what I'm saying. He goes, for some reason, it's common to hear people claim that 85 innings are more valuable than never give a reason purely based off vibes, which honestly happens a lot, which is totally understandable. Yeah. Partially because we on the data side, I think, struggle to explain a lot of these statistics when we bring them up. And then he goes, when you actually quantify the impact of both left, it's clear PCA 24 run value in the field is superior to President Ohtani, which is 21 run value pitching. So you kind of convert those two things to the same scale. And 3 runs on a run value scale isn't a lot. So perhaps, you could maybe throw in some intangible and just say maybe that's inaccurate slightly. But the people, I think, who are debating, like, is Pete being an all-time defender more valuable than 80 or so innings of Shohei Ohtani, are maybe missing the point slightly in that we can compare these two things pretty easily and see that the defense is more valuable. And to my point, Pete's just going to continue to accumulate the defensive side. And honestly, I have no idea on the Ohtani side. So how many more innings does Ohtani need to throw, do you think, to catch Pete? Does he have to throw 20s at 30s at 40? I kind of feel like it's somewhere between 30 and 40, which I don't know.
He's at 80 innings right now, 85.
Yeah. I'll confirm that.
I think he at just like a bar, got to get above 100 to me.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. So,
I mean, I would, for me, I would say probably 40 more innings to get to 120, 125. But I think at the absolute minimum, for him to really lean into the pitching value, I think he needs to throw 20 more innings. I can't. It's like, oh, well, he pitches, and he hits. Well, he hasn't pitched since Memorial Day. That's 65, 70% of the season. So. And then he was a DH. Yeah, and then he was a DH. He was a DH to 70% of the season, so he wasn't playing in the field. So, I mean, unless Shohei Ohtani just goes on an absolute tear offensively and widens the differentiation in OPS, home run, slugging percentage, if he has 100 points higher OPS, it's a different conversation, but it's not. It's separated by 9 points right now. So, I think Shohei has some work to do. I think he either needs to get back on the mound or he needs to really go on a tear offensively while Pete goes down a peg offensively, and his WAR doesn't go up as high or exponentially as it has over the last 3 months.
Yeah, 85.2 innings for Ohtani right now. Projection systems have him throwing another 15 to 20, which that's a really hard thing to project right now, just because we don't know. I do believe he was on video throwing a bullpen prior to the Cubs-Dodgers series last week. But again, I just don't know the risk the Dodgers are willing to accept to have him throw off mound. They acquired Skubal for a reason. They can probably line up 4 starters that are better than any other teams in baseballs without Shohei Ohtani in there. If you go Snell, Yamamoto, go Skubal, and then you kind of have a wild card 4th. I think that 3 alone is going to carry you, So it's a fascinating situation. There was a John Heyman tweet that it was interesting that caught a lot of steam, I think, over the weekend as Ohtani and Pete hit home runs on the same day at Wrigley Field and such. And shout out John Heyman. This is great work. He's a mentor of mine at Northwestern University. So him and I have had some conversations. He's a friend of Marquee as well. We've had him on a bunch. But he brings up this concept that he's a little confused as to he feels like WAR is overrating center fielders to some extent. And listen, he maybe has some subtle merit because there are like the structure of how WAR is created has to connect. It connects back to literal positional value, and I'm not entirely sure how often those are updated. If anything, defense in center has gotten so good that perhaps like the standard to be a center fielder has changed things, and maybe that influences WAR. Maybe my understanding of how that positional adjustment comes on in WAR has to be updated a bit in my own head. But this was an interesting debate. He basically said that it's overrating center fielders. My point to John, and I gotta reach out and tell him about this, but the main question is like, if he believes that, how much? Like what is the adjustment he wants? Is he lopping one WAR off every center fielder? In which case, like you still have Pete as the leader by like a small amount of WAR. That's like my main concern. But I do think that we've seen a lot of teams in baseball that are sharper, like the Cubs. I think of the Guardians. I think of the Brewers and some others that prize defensive value and also like win on the margins because of defense. Such that I don't think WAR is getting this dramatically wrong. I just think center field and up the middle defense is incredibly valuable. Like we've seen the entire Cubs roster basically constructed around this concept. For the last 3 years, it's been like pitching and defense. And I don't think it's underrating or overrating center fielders in a way that you can adjust it down by like 1 to 2 WAR. I don't know if you have like a gut reaction on this, but I mean, center field defense is incredibly important.
Yeah, I mean,
I think WAR captures it reasonably well.
Yeah, my take on this is like playing a premium defensive position means a lot. Like you're going to go up the middle. If you're a really good defensive catcher, if you're a good defensive shortstop, if you're a really good defensive second baseman, and you're a great center fielder, like, you're going to get more WAR. It's more valuable that way. That's baseball. Like if you are one of the better defenders, like you're constructing it up the middle. And I think if you're an elite third baseman, playing down the line, especially when incorporating arm value, you'll get a little higher WAR. Like if you're talking like Matt Chapman and Alex Bregman early on in his career. But yeah, I mean, it's just like, like up the middle defense is more important, and defense is important to win games. That's my take on it.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, Nolan Arenado had, I think, over 7 WAR, the majority of it coming from defense. I want to say this was 23 or 24. So there definitely are other positions that can accumulate it. The main thing is like as a DH, like these stats you need to put up in order to get to like 5 to 7 WAR are astronomical. Like there's a huge penalty there to not play defense. And, that's generally a byproduct of just not being as good of a player. You're not as valuable. That's why I think a lot of the time we end up with some power bats on the market that, don't have a defensive position and don't receive a lot of value despite the fact that they're mashing home runs. So I guess this culminates to me, the only way, let me know if this like vibe checks for you. The only way you can vote for Ohtani to me right now is not numbers or anything like that, because Pete has that one. It seems pretty squarely. They're basically dead even as hitters right now from a weighted runs created plus standpoint. I think Pete has a slight edge. It's like 154 to 156. I think that they're basically the same as a hitter. And then we talk about the pitching versus defense debate. We clearly see the defense is more valuable from Pete's standpoint. He's just going to continue to accumulate that. The only way that I think you could vote for Shohei Ohtani is if you believe that what he's doing is singular. There's no one else in baseball that's able to do it, and there's some value in that beyond WAR, beyond what we're actually trying to quantify that exists. Like that is the only debate. And I think that maybe the markets, which have it pretty even right now, despite the fact that numbers are like Pete will win it, are reflecting that. They're reflecting that the voters may approach this from a standpoint that doesn't actually have to do with WAR. Of the awards, MVP is the most like ambiguous from a what is valuable standpoint. We see this in other sports as well. Is it valuable to the team? Is it valuable to the player itself? That is the only way you could do it, is if you look at Ohtani and go, this will never happen again. It is singular. It is incredible. And as a result of that, I apply some crazy valuation boost to him. And every year I will just vote for him as long as he pitches 80 innings and plays 130 games at the plate.
Yeah. I mean,
do you think that's a reasonable case?
My question to that would be like, what's the threshold of pitching? Is it 100 innings? Is it 80 innings? Is it 50 innings? Is it 1 inning? Is it 1 start? So I think it's like, he's doing something that nobody else has ever done or hasn't done in nearly 100 years. Well, what's being done? And on the side of pitching, like how much is being done? So now you get into like all these different little facets of like, pitching qualifications when it comes to Shohei. I think your take is correct if it stands today. I just think that the equation and everything that goes into it is going to change, in my opinion, over the next 45 games. I think if the Dodgers are in the 3 spot, I think a bye is really important to them. Like, I know that you think, oh, once they get in the playoffs, they're fine. They're the Dodgers. They're an old team, and they're a team that's played extended postseasons each of the last 2 years. So if they have any sort of qualms about, we might have to play 3 more playoff games in hostile environments, I think they're going to pitch Shohei if he is healthy, if he's throwing bullpens. And that's when you get into, is it 20 more innings? Is it 25 more innings? Is it 50 innings? Does it get to 120, 125? How is he pitching during that? And while he is pitching, how is his hitting? Where is the margin between PCA and Shohei Ohtani's on-base percentage, slugging percentage, OPS, WRC+? So I think there's a lot that goes into this. My answer is it's an incomplete grade. We're not done yet. We have a lot of baseball left.
I agree. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Like, this is honestly somewhat of an unexpected storyline that the Cubs have had, because Pete has just had an unbelievable season, and it's great. Like, you got the playoff run alongside this. I think it's going to be really fun, kind of month and a half, 50-ish days before we get to the end of this regular season and figure out how these two stack up head-to-head. We just saw that video there of Ohtani throwing in the outfield in Arizona. I believe that was Chase Field. So, he's throwing. So whether he's off the mound soon, we'll see. I mean, if he's back in a week and a half and he's got another 6-7 starts in him, this is going to get fun. And I'm excited to see that.
We ain't done yet.
We're going to take a short break. We ain't done yet, yes. Short break here, and after the break, we'll talk about the debuts of Kevin Gausman and Clay Holmes. Stay with us. Back to the Cubs Now podcast. We were recapping the PCA Shohei Ohtani MVP debate, which was fun. And now we got to hit on some of the debuts that we've had, Alex, over the last week or so. Kevin Gausman, Clay Holmes, Ryan Zeferjahn. We'll start with Kevin Gausman. He debuted Friday for the Cubs. He pitched 7 innings, pitched pretty deep into the game. And I saw this tweet from Mike Petriello, which was kind of interesting to me. I'm always kind of locked on what guys change when they come to organizations. And at the deadline specifically is always interesting because you can kind of get some team philosophies applied. Petriello showed this, and I sorted out too. It's kind of wild to me. He basically saying the Cubs had Kevin Gausman throw a higher rate of splitters than he'd had in more than 6 years. And if you look at his career, I believe, every single start he's made in his career, this goes back to like 2013 or so, I believe, when he debuted. This is like the Friday start where he threw 53% split. It was one of the highest starts of his career. I think it's like the 3rd or 4th highest rate of splitter usage, which I don't entirely know if this is like a Cubs philosophy thing of like, hey, just throw this pitch that's your best more or what. But I wasn't expecting the Cubs to change a ton with the Gausman. This is kind of like an interesting nugget I found, and I'm kind of curious to see if it continues. What did you see from the booth in that Gausman debut on Friday?
I saw, I think what you saw is just, all right, this is your first start with the Cubs. We're trying to get a feel of where Arsenal is at right now. What's your best pitch? Oh, it's a splitter? Throw that more. That was my take on it.
Yeah, that's good stuff. He's a fascinating pitcher too. I mean, I love how his splitter and four seam interact. In the modern game of baseball, everyone's into like four seam elevation, and Gausman just kind of throws his more away to middle and lets the splitter work off it. And I mean, for the last 10 years of baseball, when he started to develop that Gausman split that everyone now kind of coins as his, that pitch has been essentially invisible. I don't know if we want to look ahead and already. I mean, of course, I'm going to ask you this because I enjoy speculation. Yeah. Game one starter in a playoff series. Removing the team context from it, you don't know whether it's lefty team, righty team. Who do you think the debate is between right now? I imagine it'd be Gausman, Boyd. Are those the two? Like it'd be one of those two based on handedness of the team?
Yep. And I just think with the amount of lefty starters that the Cubs have, especially if you think that, hey, in a wild card series, that your starters are going to be Boyd, Gausman, and Shota, I would imagine it would go like that. In a potential 5-game series, once you get to the DS, I would think you could reconfigure that a little bit just because you could potentially go 4 starters. And it really depends on Edward Cabrera, what they do when he comes back. It depends on Clay Holmes, how he does, throughout his tenure with the Cubs. I mean, we'll talk about it. His first start didn't go glowingly. There's probably some rust along with that. But if you think that Kevin Gausman and Clay Holmes are 2 of your top 3 starters when you start a playoff race, You have two righties right there, so I would imagine Kevin Gausman is your not opening day, but your game one starter. If you think that the two lefties are better than one of the righties, then I would imagine that right-handed pitcher, whether it is Kevin Gausman or it is Clay Holmes, is your game two starter. That's what I got right now. I mean, we're all saying this, early August. There's still plenty of time left. I think that's like my overall synopsis of this episode. A lot of time left. A lot of time left in the MVP race. A lot of time within the playoff race. Like, we're talking about this, and there's 25% of the season left. Like, there's still a lot to be decided.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I love the look ahead just because I do think that's going to become a topic that's coming up. Here's KG in his debut here. Just nasty stuff. Like, the split is so fun to watch. I'm excited to see it at Wrigley as well. I'm going to try to get out and watch. I always hop in and maybe watch an inning or two from behind home. I've never seen Gausman live either, so I do want to see the splitter in action. Clay Holmes also debuted Saturday. You mentioned it didn't go as strong. It's his first start since, I believe, the middle of May, too, in the majors. He made some rehab outings. He had a shin fracture, I believe it was, that kind of kept him out for the last couple months. I think he took that on a comeback, which was very unfortunate. So not one of those like soft tissue or arm injuries that I do believe creates more concern. So perhaps some rust here, not the strongest. He went 4 innings, 4 earned, only 1 strikeout, 2 walks. Historically, when he's just pitched and been healthy, he's been unbelievable. He's like if you just look at his straight ERA, even when he was a reliever, he was always in the low 3s. Last year, when the Mets stretched him out into a starting pitcher, was very successful. He kind of broke down at the end of the year, just from probably a workload standpoint he hadn't accumulated that many innings. I think he threw like over 140 in a while, which is understandable, but he gave the Mets unbelievable first 5 months of the season, basically. He's a really fascinating pitcher to me. I think he fits so well with the Cubs organization from a ground ball rate standpoint. He's a guy that's hovered in like the low 60s to mid 60s for most of his career, which is well above the league average, and you're working with 4 of the best defenders in baseball on the dirt in Horner, Swanson, Bregman, and Bush. So when he's right, you're going to see some games where maybe he doesn't strike out a lot of guys, but the ball's on the ground. He's going to have like 15 ground ball outs. Swanson's going to make some sick plays, a couple of double plays here and there and such. And that's really why I think they went after him. And I do think he will become a name that we start to mold into that convo on who's the best starter for a playoff situation, especially if you get a home game at Wrigley. Perhaps it's colder, perhaps you're expecting some kind of wind. He would line up really well to go 1 or 2 times through the lineup and just not allow a fly ball, which is really going to limit the potential for slug against maybe some slug happy teams. So he's going to be a really fun matchup piece for Craig Counsell. How did he look despite the fact the numbers weren't great?
I thought he looked. I think there was some rust, especially in the first and second inning. I mean, if you look at the recorded outs that he had, they were all ground balls, and he got 2 double play balls. So I think that's the recipe for success with Clay Holmes. Like, if there's the playbook, he adhered to the playbook. He followed the playbook. The one issue was, 2 words, Jack Caglione. You take Jack Caglione out of the game, and it's a different game. I mean, everybody else, even Bobby Wood Jr., hit the ball on the ground. So I think you want a little bit more swing and miss. Instead of 1 strikeout, you have 3, 4 strikeouts. There needs to be some swing and miss component to it. I'm not saying you need to strike out a guy per inning, but you want a little bit more than that. Yeah, I just think overall, like, he followed the playbook, especially later on in his start. But the first inning, the home run to Jack Caglione was a bomb, and Jack Caglione went 4 for 4 with 2 homers and 2 doubles. A really talented player, had a really good game. But outside of that, I thought he pitched pretty well.
Yeah, very excited to see him moving forward. And the last guy we'll hit on here before we get out of here is Ryan Zeferjahn. Kind of an interesting name. They trade Mason McGuire, Moises Ballesteros for him under control through 2030. So they got a lot of time to kind of mold him into the leverage reliever they want. He's already been used in some leverage spots. His debut, I think this was his debut, if I'm remembering correctly, was at Wrigley, and he threw in a pretty unbelievable sweeper to Shohei Ohtani. So, yeah, we're throwing you right into the fire, which I love, just from like this guy's a dog standpoint, Like, hey, your Wrigley debut is not going to be a 5-1 game where we're winning and you're coming in the 6th. You're facing the best team in baseball and the best hitter on the planet, one of the more generational players we've had in the last couple of years in Shohei Ohtani, and good luck. And he looked great. He gave up a homer the next day, I believe it was, to Ohtani on a little oppo shot that probably only gets out of the park when a guy like Ohtani's swinging, because to do that, to hit that ball oppo, you need incredible bat speed, and that is what Ohtani has. So, but this debut, this was Tuesday night, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, really strong. The big thing that jumps out to me, too, we did a breakdown, Cliff Floyd and I, on our pregame show, and I was talking about how His season walk rate's around like 13-14%, which is high. It's above average for a reliever. The big thing that I did also see on Twitter that stunned me is that, so if you go to his first 41 and 2/3 innings this season, 17% walk rate. Okay, not great. That was primarily with the Angels, all with the Angels. His last 12.2, this is including his outings with the Cubs, 2% walk rate. Like, I don't know what happened for him to correct this in a matter of seconds, but I'm excited to meet him in the clubhouse, chat with him, and ask him how. Because he had to have done something. I don't know if it's mental. I don't know if he changed something mechanically that we can't spot from the data. But, I mean, you go from a 17% walk rate to a 2% walk rate. It kind of reminds me of Pete correcting his chase, where it's like, oh my God, Pete's more, more than anybody in baseball out of the zone. And then this season, it's like, oh, he's actually one of the more disciplined hitters in baseball. So, he just corrected. He just fixed it. So, I don't know if there's something in the water here at Wrigley, but I'm excited to see Zeferjahn moving forward. Has he impressed you in his short tenure with the Cubs so far?
He has. I mean, it's credible to see that in real time, just like Pete, what he's doing from a plate discipline standpoint, Ryan Zeferjahn, what he's doing from a control standpoint. And as you said, like 13-14%, is livable when it comes to a high leverage reliever because he does have an elite strikeout rate and he barely gets any hard contact. But it limits the window of error and like the margin of error. But if he can be at 2%, he is a back end of the bullpen arm with his stuff and his strikeout rate and his swing and miss potential for a long time. I think it'll live somewhere in the 7 to 8% range, which again is pretty good. I love the arm, man. I think he's really impressive.
Agree, yeah. Even if he's around 10%, I think that's fine. A lot of relievers kind of kick up a little higher and can still miss bats. If he's at 2%, he might be the best reliever in baseball. So I'm sure the Cubs are very happy to have Zeferjahn. We're happy to watch Zeferjahn as well. Thanks as always for joining us here on the Cubs Now podcast. See you guys soon.